Shell voicings are incredibly versatile for the accompanist, especially in duos. One of the coolest things you can do when accompanying is play a bass line along with your shell voicings. Stick around and I'll show you how. Hi, I'm Dr. George, Jumpstart Jazz Guitar. Jazz guitar for busy adults. Everything you need to know without all the noise. I hope you're enjoying the channel, and if you are, please make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, and also don't forget to like the video. When you're playing in a duo, you're going to have to fill all of the roles of the arrangement at one point in time or another. And so sometimes you're going to be playing in the foundation, sometimes you'll be playing rhythm, fills, and even occasionally you get to do some lead. But you can't do everything all at once, and so you need to vary the textures to create that illusion that it's all happening. One of the best ways to do that is to play bass lines that are independent of the chords that you're playing. So let's take a look at some ways to do that. We'll start by looking at 2 bass notes per chord. Okay? So the first note is going to be the root. The other note will be any of the other chord tones, whatever happens to be most convenient. Now, if our root is on our 5th string, well, that's going to be pretty easy. We can go ahead and get the 5th. The 5th is probably the most common note that we'll be using with these alternating basses. Okay. Now, this is going to work no matter what chord you're playing. With one exception, and that would be the minor 7 flat 5. Now, in our shell voicings, there are no 5ths. But if we're going to alternate the bass, if we're going to add another bass note and it's going to be the 5th, it has to be the flat 5th. So it would be here. Now, that seems a little dissonant, but when we resolve it, it doesn't sound so bad at all. With the root on the 6th string, it's a little bit more difficult. Here's a major 7th chord. Now the problem is that the 5th is up here. And so if I want to get that, well, I could change my fingering like this, or maybe I want to play the chord, the whole chord. But what I usually end up doing is this. Find it a little bit easier. Now, another option is we don't have to play the 5th. We could play the 3rd. And that might work really well, particularly if you're going to the 4 chord. So you'll choose a note that will make the most sense for you. Now, when we're playing the 6 chords with the root on the 6th string, that presents a little bit more difficult fingering problem. So here we have a minor 6 chord. Now to get to the root, alternating root, it's here. But once again, we could go to the 3rd. Okay. And the same thing is true with the major 6 chord. Now with the major 6 chord, I can go here. You could do this. Now, if you want to try this pattern, learn to do this, certainly go for it. Okay? Spend about 5 minutes a day playing just nothing but this chord. And after a couple of days, you'll probably have it. Now, one other thing that I will mention with the major 6 chord, most of the time the major 6 chord can be alternated with the major 7th chord. Okay. The reason we use the major 6 chord is usually to prevent a clash with the root in the melody. You see, if we play a major 7 chord with the root in the melody, it sounds something like this. And we get this kind of nasty sound in there, so we want to get rid of that. So we play this major 6 chord, and it gives us a much nicer interval. But that melody note is probably going to be on 1 or 2, certainly not on 3 or 4, so you can certainly switch and alternate between the major 6th chord and the major 7th chord. Now, if you want to make this swing, you're going to have to work on a rhythm. Obviously, we can't just simply go. Ends up sounding kind of like a polka. What we need is something a little bit more rhythmic. Okay? And so we're going to start out. Our bass line is going to be something like this. See, so we're anticipating that last one in groups of 4, 2-beat pattern, and then the chords are going to be on the upbeats. Now, if you want, you can also add a little bit of 2 and 4. Okay. Another option to make it swing, instead of hitting the strings on 4, you can also add another bass note. You can either jump back to the root, or you can play a passing tone. Now, Latin rhythms will usually have 2 bass notes per chord as well. And most of the time we're going to alternate with the 5th. And so the bass note is 1, 3, the end of 4, end of 2, 3. And you'll have 2 options here. You can either go or either one will work. Now the chords are going to be on 2, the end of 3, the end of 1, and 4. Now this can be played really fast with not very much tightening up. And so it can either be a bossa or a samba. So now let's talk about walking bass. The basic rhythm is going to be 1 and 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to have the root on the downbeat, and then we also want to have a chord tone on the 3rd beat, so that we can play the chord with it. Now on the other beats, they can either be a chord tone or a passing tone or an approach tone. And one of the easiest patterns to use is to use a neighbor figure. And what you do here, we play this, we'll go down to here and then come back. Okay? And the reason that works so well is because on 1 we're on the chord. Now we have an approach tone, a neighbor tone. And then on 3 we have the chord again. And it sounds just fine. Now the next thing you can do, another way, we can do arpeggios. And so and if we're going down, we don't necessarily have to play all of the notes, but we're playing chord. We can also use approach tones on beat 4. We could simply just do. Okay, so an approach tone basically is a note that will resolve by half step. We can also do it with arpeggios. It works with Latin tunes as well. Now, when we have 2 beats per chord, it's basically the same as if you were playing a 2-beat. And you can play either the root and the 5th, or the root and the 3rd, or the root and the 7th. So when you put it all together, you create some opportunities for some really nice variations in texture that aren't that difficult to play. So mix it up. Play enough to create the illusion so that people think that they're hearing more than they really are. So now you have another way to use shell voicings. And if you need help with shell voicings, please download my free guide, Jazz Chord Mastery Volume 1. And if you have any questions, or if you have a topic you'd like me to cover on a future video, feel free to drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.